Most people fear old age not because the body weakens, but because they believe something essential disappears with it. Purpose, meaning, identity. The fear is not of wrinkles or slowing down, but of becoming invisible, irrelevant, unfinished. From the moment we are young, modern culture trains us to chase youth, productivity, and validation. We are taught how to perform, how to succeed, how to remain useful, but we are rarely taught how to grow old well. Aging is framed as decline, slowness as failure, stillness as something to be avoided. Carl Jung believed this was a tragic misunderstanding of human life. According to Jung, the second half of life is not a weaker continuation of the first. It is a completely different psychological journey. The first half is about building a place in the world. The second half is about discovering who you are without the world's applause. One moves outward, the other moves inward. Jung did not see aging as loss. He saw it as transformation, a turning inward, a movement toward wholeness. And within his work lie 4 essential psychological pillars that determine whether old age becomes a time of bitterness and fear or the most meaningful phase of life. These pillars are not comforting illusions or self-help tricks. They are demanding, sometimes unsettling truths about the human psyche. The 4th pillar in particular is rarely discussed openly. Jung considered it essential, yet deeply misunderstood. Without it, the other 3 remain incomplete. Stay with this until the end, because without the final insight, peace in the later years of life remains out of reach. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the Deep Psyche channel if you are drawn to psychology that goes beneath surface motivation and into the deeper structure of the human soul. Now let's begin. Pillar 1. Individuation, the shift from outer authority to inner truth. In the first half of life, identity is built through adaptation. We learn how to belong, how to meet expectations, and how to survive within family, culture, and society. Jung called this adaptive identity the persona, a psychological mask that allows us to function in the world. Without it, life would be chaotic. The persona is not false. It is necessary. But problems begin when the persona hardens, when a person becomes identical with the role they once needed to survive. Many people reach midlife or old age still living inside identities formed decades earlier. The responsible provider, the obedient child, the achiever, the respectable figure. Roles that once brought stability now feel empty. This discomfort is not failure, it is a signal. The psyche is asking for a new orientation. Jung called this process individuation, the gradual shift of authority from the outer world to the inner one. It is the realization that meaning cannot be borrowed forever from roles, institutions, or approval. This transition is rarely comfortable. Old certainties weaken. Former goals lose their emotional charge. A person may feel disoriented, restless, or quietly depressed. Jung did not see this as pathology. He saw it as psychological maturation. Something essential is trying to emerge. Individuation does not mean withdrawal from life or isolation from others. It means alignment. In old age, this inner authority becomes crucial. Without it, aging feels like subtraction. With it, aging becomes refinement. What remains is not less, but truer. Pillar 2. Integrating the shadow, the courage to face oneself without illusion. If individuation is the destination, the shadow is the terrain that must be crossed. The shadow contains everything we rejected in order to be accepted. Traits we judged unacceptable, emotions we suppressed, desires we feared, potentials we never dared to live. These aspects do not disappear. They accumulate. In younger years, survival pressures keep the shadow at bay, but as external demands fade, the shadow begins to speak. It often appears as regret, bitterness, cynicism, or a quiet sadness with no obvious cause. Many mistake this for decline. Jung understood it as an invitation. He believed moral development does not mean becoming more good. It means becoming whole. Shadow integration requires honesty without self-deception, recognizing aggression without acting it out, acknowledging envy without shame, accepting vulnerability without collapse. This process is uncomfortable because it dismantles the image we carefully constructed of ourselves, but it is also liberating. When the shadow is acknowledged, it loses its destructive power. What once erupted unconsciously can now be held consciously. In later life, this integration produces psychological softening. Judgment gives way to understanding. Rigidity gives way to flexibility. Reactivity gives way to calm presence. Not because life was easy, but because the person stopped lying to themselves. Pillar 3. Meaning after achievement, from doing to being. One of the deepest crises of aging comes from a cultural misunderstanding of meaning. Modern society equates value with productivity. When productivity slows, identity collapses. Jung considered this a profound psychological error. The second half of life demands a different kind of meaning, one not based on doing, but on being. As time shortens, attention naturally turns inward. This is not regression, it is transformation. The future no longer stretches endlessly ahead, and because of this, the present deepens. Experiences are no longer judged by usefulness, but by resonance. Memory, imagination, and symbolism gain importance. Life begins to feel coherent rather than fragmented. Past events once experienced as failures or mistakes reveal themselves as necessary movements within a larger story. Meaning in later life arises from seeing one's life as a whole, not as a list of achievements, but as a lived psychological journey. This brings a quiet fulfillment that does not depend on recognition or applause, yet even this remains incomplete without facing the final psychological task. Pillar 4. Reconciling with death, the final act of psychological maturity. Modern culture treats death as a problem to be postponed. Jung treated it as a psychological reality to be understood. He believed the psyche prepares for death just as it prepares for life, through dreams, symbols, and shifts in awareness. When this process is resisted, fear dominates. When it is accepted, calm emerges. Jung did not claim to know what happens after death. What mattered was the attitude toward it. A life lived in denial of mortality becomes shallow, driven by distraction and avoidance. A life lived in awareness of mortality becomes sincere, focused, and meaningful. To make peace with death is not to desire it. It is to give it a rightful place within one's understanding of existence. When death is acknowledged, priorities clarify. Petty concerns fall away. What remains is what truly matters: connection, truth, integrity, presence. In this sense, death is not the enemy of life, but its silent partner. It gives depth to our choices and gravity to our values. This final pillar cannot be taught as a technique. It emerges slowly through reflection, loss, and courage. But when it does, old age ceases to feel like decline. It becomes completion. For Jung,